Hey, this is Tyler with Ready Man. So this is going to be a video on the rule of threes. Now, this is basically the core of everything when it comes to wilderness survival. Essentially, the problem is we can talk about survival, but we can't. It's really hard to say what is survival. Well, on a base level, it's don't die. However, there's more to it than just don't die. And the biggest issue is people get their priorities completely mixed up. As an example, they'll search for food when they should be building shelters. So the thing that they have that corrects that, and probably almost your governing rule, is the rule of threes. Now, there's the rule of threes, as everyone knows it, and then there's my version of the rule of threes. My version of the rule of threes works like this. You have 3 seconds without security. I use that one starting up front because of all the soldiers that I work with, and it's good for concealment carriers, law enforcement, because if you haven't carried a weapon into a denied area, you are going to find yourself in a situation where you need a weapon, and that's going to kill you first. So that is the shortest amount of time. So security is your number one. The next thing is you have 3 minutes without air. I use that for diving and all sorts of other situations. If you don't have air, then food and water and all that other stuff is completely irrelevant. The next thing is 3 hours without shelter. Now, that depends on the situation, the area. Like right now, I've got a jacket on, I'm good. If I was sitting here naked, I probably genuinely would have maybe an hour and a half to 3 hours before I die because of exposure. So that one is the one that basically sticks out the most. Your shelter, the clothes you're wearing, the stuff you build is almost always more important than water and fire and food and all that other stuff. So remember, 3 hours without shelter from exposure. The next one is 3 days. You have 3 days without water. Sometimes you can die in a day without water. Sometimes you can die in almost a week. The key is water is more important than food most of the time, and less important than shelter or wearing the right amount of clothes. The next one is you have 3 weeks without food. So yes, you're going to get cranky in about a day without food. Yes, there's stuff that can make it harder for you to deal with, but you're not going to die. You will die without shelter. You will die without water. You won't die for quite a while without food. 3 weeks without food. And the last one that I add, because people tend to skip this and forget about it, is 3 months without companionship. So do understand that if you're a normal person and you're spending extended amounts of time, eventually you're going to go a little bit insane and want the companionship of other people. So always plan people into your contingency. Always make sure that people are part of the planning process for long-term survival. That's when we start getting into gardening. That's when we start getting into mechanical, building stuff from scratch, doing things the old school way. So when you find yourself in a situation, ask yourself the number one question: what will kill me first? And then use the rule of threes to make sure that the answer to that question is actually truthful. If you're in a war zone, probably getting shot is the first thing that's going to kill you. If you're in a desert, probably exposure to the sun or freezing at night will be the first thing to kill you, closely followed by water. If you're in the jungle, you almost don't need shelter, almost. But again, water, if you don't have pure water, and food will be the things that kill you. Ultimately, though, in the jungle, getting lost is the major issue there. So each environment is going to have its own problems that you need to deal with. Each environment is going to have different ways that you need to excel at when it comes to starting fire, creating shelters, doing navigation, feeding yourself. It's very important to get good at each thing for each environment in order to deal with all these things. All right, guys, that should be your founding principle when it comes to wilderness survival. The rule of threes. What's going to kill me first? Then address that issue, then move on to the next thing, and move on to the next thing, and move on to the next thing. As an example, right now it's snowing. It's cold. I'm in the mountains. Exposure will kill me first. I need a shelter first. The next thing I need is fire so that I can purify water, cook food, keep myself heated, and keep the animals away. The next thing I need to work on is the procurement of water. You know, what good is water that I can't drink because I've already got fire? And then the absolute last thing I need to work on is food. And then also add into their medical security and communications. Communications in the form of 3 large fires that I would light to get myself out of here. So hopefully that's valuable to you. If you have any questions about this, leave comments down in the discussion box. And thank you for watching.